Depopulation should be the highest priority of foreign policy towards the Third World. A game turned against the perpetrators. And the disbelievers planned, but Allah planned. And Allah is the best of planners. Q. 354. We are all familiar with the slogan family planning hurled all over the world. Most of the Western countries unwittingly, oblivious of its bitter outcome, embraced and practiced it religiously. Thomas Robert Malthus, an English cleric and philosopher, abandoning his religiously structured thinking for secularism, penned his catastrophic theory in 1798. He came up with the weird concepts of geometrical population growth in comparison to arithmetical food supply growth, concluding that resulting disparate population growth, in terms of diminishing return, would result in food shortage. He further theorized that so created imbalance could be corrected through preventive and positive checks on population growth to a sustainable level. The result is Malthusian catastrophe faced by most of the Western countries in the form of negative or lowest level of population growth. Positive checks or natural checks. He believed that natural forces will correct the imbalance between food supply and population growth in the form of natural disasters such as floods and earthquakes and man-made actions such as wars and famines. Man taking the matter in his own hands, depriving Africa and the developing Muslim-dominated Third World countries of the food and resources. Forced sterilization part of his man-made actions. Preventative checks. To correct the imbalance, Malthus also suggested using preventative measures to control the growth of the population. These measures include family planning, late marriages, and celibacy. The effect of these measures turned the Western society upside down as it gave rise to the following abnormal, rather perverted, thinking such as, hell, with the children let's have fun for the longest time. Let's have the children we can afford, as if there is no sustainer, which resulted in decelerated population growth / negative population growth. No fear of pregnancy, due to contraception / abortion, gave rise to rampant promiscuity. Abortion became as easy as throwing the baby out with the bathwater or like dispensing away the used condom. As a consequence, countries were / are forced to offer an incentive such as paternity leave to encourage the population growth, France. And do not kill your children for fear of poverty. We provide for them and for you. Indeed, their killing is ever a great sin. Q. 1731. Muslims on the other hand, by and large, did not pay heed to this nonsensical secular propaganda and continued as usual. Treading this path, however, has not been without criticism and sufferings, but the result is that by 2030 Muslim would become the largest religious group of the world. The neutralist view, rapid population growth neither promotes nor impedes economic growth, has held sway. The emergence of this view has coincided with a declining interest in family planning as an instrument of economic development. The Islamic perspective on population growth and prevention. A vast majority of fuqaha, Muslim jurists, past and present, hold that temporarily putting off childbearing is permissible on an individual basis. In my view, it ought to be legitimized by some compulsion author, but not as a societal ideal which overrides the default encouragement to have children. The philosophy of Sharia, a clear path. There is a comprehensive Islamic philosophy underpinning Sharia. For each of your group, we have appointed a divine law and a traced out way. Had Allah willed, He could have made you one community. But that He may try you by that which He hath given you, He hath made you as ye are. So, vie one with another in good works. Unto Allah, ye will all return, and He will then inform you of that wherein ye differ. Q. 548. For Muslims, life did not begin at birth, but a long time before that. Before even the creation of the first man. It began when God created the souls of everyone who would ever exist and asked them, Am I not your Lord? They all replied, Yea. God decreed for each soul a time on earth so that He might try them. Then, after the completion of their appointed terms, He would judge them and send them to their eternal destinations, either one of endless bliss or one of everlasting grief. This life, then, is a journey that presents to its wayfarers many paths. Only one of these paths is clear and straight. This path is the Sharia. Prophet, Pbuh, said, Marry those who are loving and fertile, for I will be proud of your great numbers before the other nations. Abu Dawud, 2050, narrated that Maqil ibn Yasar said, classed as Sahih by al-Albani and Urwa al-Ghalil, 1784. Imam Ghazali said, when a man gets married, intending thereby to have children, this is an act of worship for which he will be rewarded in multiple ways because of his good intentions. 1. The perpetuation of human race, willed by Allah, SWT. 2. Fulfilling the wish/will of the Prophet, numerical superiority of Muslim nation. 3. Forgiveness through the prayers of righteous offsprings. Abraham, Q. 37, 100, Zechariah Q. 19-3-7, prayed for righteous offsprings. Most Muslim-dominated countries are governed by Western, or Western-like, laws, codes and institutions. This hybrid, mix of, Anglo-Islamic legal system has vitiated the governance by / role of Islamic laws, thereby making it analogical deduction, Quay's reasoning, easy, to legitimize the use of modern contraceptive techniques. Many Muslim-dominated countries, therefore, promulgated laws to combat overpopulation despite ambiguity on the issue of fertility control. The Quran, first source of Islamic law, forbids the killing of children in categorical terms, Q. 1731, while being silent on the use of contraception. Allah also promised well-being of those who get married despite lacking means. Q. 2432, guaranteeing the sustenance, Q. 2960. Remember, we do not ask thee to provide sustenance for your family/people, it is we who provide sustenance for you and your family/people. And the future belongs to the God-conscious. Q. 20-132. Most sayings of the Prophet on the subject of coitus interruptus, Azael, are reticent. The position commonly and historically shared by Islamic jurists coincides with al-Ghazali's interpretation, according to which, coitus interruptus is barely tolerable, makruh. There have always been a minority of jurists, absolutely opposed to contraception. Most jurists tend to forbid permanent birth control except when necessitated by serious hazards/issues. The abortion to prevent childbirth is clearly forbidden in Islam, Q. 1731. Despite governments having passed family planning laws, much of the general public believes that Islamic laws prohibit contraception. Note, practicing Azael, coitus interruptus, pre-ejaculation withdrawal, was allowed, with reticence despite it being makruh repugnant. As the condom had not then been invented, therefore, the use of condom instead may, on the basis of analogical deduction, vitiate the psychological and physical reasons attached to coitus interruptus, while used for gaping the pregnancies. Gaping the pregnancies do not seem to be impermissible/reprehensible, for there is no textual or hadithic forbiddance available, as is in the case of permanent birth control. The Islamic concept of breastfeeding a baby, for 2 to 2.5 gestating/weaning period, Q. 46-15, years, rather supports the gaping in pregnancies. Q. 2-233, breastfeeding is a natural means of contraception for the mother. Asia, Africa and the Middle East and the Muslim population in Europe, the main beneficiaries of the demographic dividend. Demographic dividend, as defined by the United Nations Population Fund, means the economic growth potential that can result from shifts in a population's age structure, mainly when the share of the working age population, 15 to 64, is larger than the non-working age share of the population, 14 and younger, and 65 and older. In other words, it is a boost in economic productivity that occurs when there are growing numbers of people in the workforce relative to the number of dependents. The demographic dividend is delivered through a number of mechanisms. The most important are labor supply, savings, and human capital. Remarkable decline in fertility rates. The study, published in The Lancet, followed trends in every country from 1950 to 2017. In 1950, women were having an average of 4.7 children in their lifetime. The fertility rate all but halved to 2.4 children per woman by last year. But that masks huge variation between nations. The fertility rate in Niger, West Africa, is 7.1, but in the Mediterranean island of Cyprus, women are having one child, on average. In the UK, the rate is 1.7, similar to most Western European countries. Births per woman in year 2016. Afghanistan 4.64, Pakistan 3.48, 6.60 in 1960, Saudi Arabia 2.53, India 2.33, Bangladesh 2.10, Iran 1.66. How high does the fertility rate have to be? The total fertility rate is the average number of children a woman gives birth to in her lifetime. It's different to the birth rate, which is the number of children born per thousand people each year. Whenever a country's rate drops below approximately 2.1, then the population will eventually start to shrink. This baby bust figure is significantly higher in countries which have high rates of death in childhood. At the start of the study, in 1950, there were 0 nations in this position. Reasons for falling fertility rate. The fall in fertility rate is not down to sperm counts or any of the things that normally come to mind when thinking of fertility. Instead, it is being put down to 3 key factors. 1. Fewer deaths in childhood, meaning women have fewer babies. 2. Greater access to contraception. 3. More women in schools/colleges and the workforce. It may be termed as a success story. Top 10 highest fertility rate countries in 2017. Niger 7.1, Chad 6.7, Somalia 6.1, Mali 6.0, Afghanistan 6.0, South Sudan 5.9, Burkina Faso 5.4, Burundi 5.3, Uganda 5.2, Angola 5.1. Bottom 10 lowest fertility rate countries in 2017. Cyprus 1, Taiwan 1, South Korea 1.2, Andorra 1.2, Puerto Rico 1.2, Thailand 1.2, Bosnia 1.3, Poland 1.3, Moldova 1.3, Japan 1.3. The population control Holocaust. Accordingly, ideologues at some of the highest levels of power and influence formulated a party line that the population of the world's poor nations needed to be drastically cut in order to reduce the potential recruitment pool available to the communist cause. It may now be argued, by the same elements, that this pool will be available for terrorist recruitment. President Lyndon Johnson was provided a fraudulent study by a Rand Corporation economist that used cooked calculations to prove that third world children actually had negative economic value. Thus, by allowing excessive numbers of children to be born, Asian, African, and Latin American governments were deepening the poverty of their populations, while multiplying the masses of angry proletarians ready to be led against America by the organizers of the coming world revolution. An Office of Population was set up within USAID, and Dr. Reimert Thorolf Ravenholt was appointed its first director in 1966. He would hold the post until 1979, using it to create a global empire of interlocking population-controlled organizations operating with billion-dollar budgets to suppress the existence of people considered undesirable by the U.S. Department of State. Dr. Ravenholt, an epidemiologist by training, he apparently looked on pregnancy as a disease, to be eradicated in the same way one eliminates smallpox or yellow fever. He was also, as it happened, a bellicose misanthrope. His business cards were printed on condoms, and he delighted in handing them out to all comers. Henry Kissinger, an evil mind. We found a big hunk in NSSM 200, also known as Implications of Worldwide Population Growth for U.S. Security and Overseas Interests, the Kissinger Report. NSSM stands for National Security Study Memorandum. The government document was published in 1974 and made public in 1980. The Kissinger Report says that the U.S. economy will require large and increasing amounts of minerals from abroad, especially from less developed countries. Whatever may be done to guard against interruptions of supply and to develop domestic alternatives, needs to be done. That fact gives the U.S. enhanced interest in the political, economic, and social stability of the supplying countries. Wherever a lessening of population pressures through reduced birth rates can increase the prospects for such stability, population policy becomes relevant to resource supplies and to the economic interests of the United States. In a national security memo dated April 24, 1974, titled, Implications of Worldwide Population Growth for the United States Security and Overseas Interest, Henry Kissinger, the Secretary of State under Richard Nixon, indicated, depopulation should be the highest priority of foreign policy towards the Third World. Depopulation, depopulate something means, to ravage, to ruin, to reduce the population, by violence, disease, etc. Mr. Kissinger continued, this means they are going to destroy the population of mainly Third World countries. Those worried about overpopulation and the depletion of resources should read these two pieces and then rationally decide if the Supreme Being who is so comprehensively perfect about the numbers and time wouldn't know what is he doing? https://shakir2.wordpress.com/2019/01/03/ Quran a divine manifestation confirmed by 19/ https://shakir2.wordpress.com/2019/01/03/ proof of the originator God/ Many Muslim often wonder why Saudi Arabia, with all the wealth in the world, has done almost nothing for the poverty alleviation or stopping the mass conversion of African Muslims to Christianity. 6 million every year, it obediently followed the dictates of its Western masters to stem the overpopulation of the world. Shakir2.wordpress.com